Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking to Chris Slee. Chris, looking forward to diving in with you on our talk today. You guys do some pretty cool stuff. Your company is AWH. You are the founder, principal, and chief product officer, responsible for monetizing market trends, technology requirements, identifying room for growth, and opportunities for innovation. And you guys are doing cool things in the digital product space. So,
Yes.
you know, define what that means, I think, for people, because I think, it can mean something different to everybody. So define digital marketing space.
Yeah. So for us, a digital product is something that's primarily software driven, right? So when we look at applications and, it's beyond just sort of marketing kind of stuff, it's really looking at a product that exists in the digital space. So we do work for clients that are coming in with a very sort of fuzzy idea of what they want to accomplish, or we work with sort of large organizations that are doing innovations into greenfield space, and we help them define that product, figure out a market fit, figure out what the product is, how it relates to its customers, and then help them build it and take it out to market and monetize it and turn it into a business.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to rewind for a minute, right? So, because I think a lot of people, especially today, we're sitting here April 15th, Chris, we're over a year into COVID. Hopefully by the end of the year, they're saying things will be back to, normal, right? This hybrid normalcy.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of ideas. One thing this past year has really spurred is a lot of new ideas, whether it's from new entrepreneurs, whether it's from people who are part-time entrepreneurs, whether it's businesses of all different types saying, hey, this is a new idea because of where the world is now going. What I see and what I've talked to people, they said that COVID has accelerated things 5-10 years. And I think the ideas are just coming out of the woodwork. But here's my question for you. A lot of people have a really good idea, but then they need to determine, and I see this as a business coach when I'm talking to clients, will somebody actually buy that idea, that product, that service, et cetera? And so a lot of people, and then, people will call me and say, well, what do you think about this idea? Well, it's not that easy. It's not a 4-second conversation.
Right.
To say like, hey, and so I want to go back to where you talked about the fuzzy idea, right? Because a lot of times people have the ideas and do nothing. And then there are the small percentage that actually do something, that invest in the evolution and the growth of the idea. And then even at that point, some make it, some don't. But let's go back to the fuzzy idea and how you build a fuzzy idea.
Yeah. So it's pretty universal. When someone comes to us, they have the shape of an idea, right? But then when you start really asking questions about its implementation, how the client, whoever the user is going to use that tool, what is their job? What problem is this thing solving for them? Because that's really the key to product, right? If it's not solving your client's problem, don't build it. You may have this greatest idea in your head for this thing, and unless it's solving a problem you have, or you directly know it's a problem for your client, you really want to evaluate whether you want to do that or not. So when we sort of walk through that, we just assume that they don't have all the answers when they get there, right? So when they start talking to us, they will have this shape of an idea, and we help them turn that into a product. Essentially, chip away by asking questions and talking to what could be potentially their customers about what are they really trying to accomplish, what problem does it solve for the customer, and does anyone care? Right?
Yeah. What are some of those other questions, right, that you're asking?
So it is looked, and what's surprising, a lot of people are like, oh, well, what's the competitive landscape? And are there already people in that space doing that same thing? And why would you want to do that? And we try not to look at that. Now we'll do landscape analysis to make sure that there's a market there, but we never want to approach a product solution by imitating somebody else. You need to go find out what the solution that your customer is looking for, that's unique and then you could provide them that solution, not what did somebody else think was your customer's problem, and just let's go make a copy of that, right?
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of questions where you're really trying to create gaps in the product space.
But let's talk about that, because there's the competitive analysis, and then there's the idea of believing in your product and where you can build market share, or within an already potentially saturated market, but maybe they're missing something. I've interviewed a couple of people on the podcast this week. One was a guy yesterday, Dan Dembski, with a company called Unbound Wool. And it's like this clothes company. It's great. I just bought some yesterday, where everything's like simple clothing, right? Like black, blue, gray. And it's like their whole thing is about just classic. And he talks about how he's just naive. He was naive moving in and didn't really worry about it. And now his business is exploding. I interviewed another woman earlier this week, Emily Rasmussen, with a company called grapevine.org. And they basically became a way for these, the name is escaping me, but crowd groups of people to pay, of charities to pay through one portal, right? Because it was just like a missing piece. Yeah. And so I want to talk about kind of the missing piece. And also, I remember I used to, I worked at Channel 7. I interned there my last year of college, many, many decades ago. And one of the things they used to talk about is you got to be fast, first, and right. Yeah. And so and through my Al Rise and Jack Trout readings, they used to say, if the market's too saturated, just create a new market. So talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. So one of the clients I work with heavily is an organization, and they built like a 900-pound functional trainer, right? So it was a piece of weight lifting equipment. And we cloud enabled that and made it so physical therapists can prescribe workouts on this functional piece of equipment, and that went great. And then the organizations that were buying that piece of equipment said, "Hey, we have all this other equipment in our facility. Can you somehow digitize all of that?" So then we helped them think through sort of a sensor IoT kind of platform that tied it back into this larger cloud play. And then the pandemic hit. No one was buying 900-pound functional trainers, and no one was buying IoT sensor platforms. But we had this great sort of clinical portal that allowed PT to occur. So we started looking at machine learning, and we built an entire vision capability that now we can deploy out into the field with just cameras, no software, no hardware. And had the pandemic not happened, we would have never been pressed into taking that next step, because we'd be happily out selling sensor platforms, right? But it's those kind of things you not only have to react to what's going on in the market, but sometimes you have to go create that market and figure out, is this audacious enough that no one's ever done it because it can't be done, or is it just the time it wasn't right before and it is right now? And then to go after it.
Yeah, let's dive into that, because as you and I sit here and talk, we can talk about how it's easy to go after it. And in hindsight, after a business is successful, it's easy to hear someone say, we went after it. But going after it requires faith, a little bit of courage, some hope, a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work. Many 60, 70, 80-hour weeks for months and months and months, if not years, investing in it, surrounding yourself with the right people. And so just kind of talk about like how you define going after it. Because I really think people listening now and maybe in the future, where they want to go after it, and there's a small percentage of people who think it's easy, but the majority of the people realize, wow, the reason we don't start is because I don't have 2 years, X amount of, thousands of dollars to quote unquote waste versus invest in the potential passion.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, sometimes customer or sometimes people will bring in a project and we'll talk about, what they want to produce from a product perspective. And they've left very little room for the experimentation that you need to take sometimes when you're building a product that doesn't exist, right? Because there's this concept of I have this idea, I want to produce it, I want to get into market, and as soon as you get told by a customer they don't want to buy that for this reason, you have to have the capability to. It's great. A friend of mine, talked about we're not pivoting our company, we're just fanning wider. Right?
Yeah, I like
we're not
that.
changing what we're fundamentally doing. We're just opening the fan a little bit more to be able to accept a new direction. Right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's a good way to approach that. But to be able to then sort of think through that and continue on with the path that you're on, looking for the best opportunity, and that does require a lot of hard work, and B, when someone's really successful with it, it appears like they were just destined to do it, and it's nice to see those, but that is not true. No one is destined to succeed. It requires you to understand your ecosystem, your investment strategies, the venture that's around you, who can connect and start using that platform, how much you're willing to go talk to customers even before you've built something.
Yeah.
And all the luck is made, right?
Yeah.
So.
Right. No, I hear you on that. All right, so let's talk for a little bit about you guys. Again, you're a production studio and you focus on digital products. Let's talk digital products of the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's all of this technology. There's artificial intelligence. There's virtual reality. There is Oculus. There are HoloLens. There are NTFs, right? NFTs, and there's all of this stuff that I think people are trying to figure out, like what does that digitally mean 5-10 years from now, and how do I even get started? I think most people don't even understand it.
Yeah, I think and that goes back to that sort of that blurry vision of what a product is. It's less important to pick the technology, more important to find out what your customer needs. Because that's what's going to build a business, right? And now, if we want to go do R&D experimentation, and we do VR, we do AR, we do a lot of machine learning stuff, but those are experimental until you can monetize it, right? So you have to have the funding to be able to do those kind of experiments. Our sort of direction has always been, what you really need to be able to do is find the niche that solves a problem for your customer and then build off of that niche, right? And your clothing example is a great one. Very simple, 3-color wool.
I just want to say one thing, right? Go into that a little more detail. I said the wrong name of the company. It's Unbound Merino, unboundmerino.com.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. So go ahead. Go ahead. Keep on going.
But I like the concept, right? It's a simple product. It solves a problem. It's for a niche organization, and then suddenly it takes off. And that happens over and over and over again, right? And we have to sometimes caution our clients on like feature creep, right? Like, oh, I have to have 400 things that this thing does before someone will use the very first thing. It's like, no, that is wrong. You want to come up with the 3 things or one thing maybe that you're solving. Take that and start getting into customers' hands and start getting feedback. Okay? Yeah. And whether it's a tangible product like sweaters, clothing, or whether it's a digital product, you really want to be able to quickly get that one key element into the hands of your customers. I mean, we know of companies that now have been built out, and it's a great story. The guy was building a healthcare portal. He was scrapping it, right? I mean, he was scrappy. He was building his little prototypes in Microsoft Paint and taking them around and showing physicians, and people that worked in doctors' offices. So he had spending no money, right? No designers, no big things. And he threw a tab onto his little Paint, visual, and doctors' offices kept asking him what's behind that particular menu item. And he didn't even know that this was a problem. And then as he started talking to the physicians' offices, he ended up talking to them about this tab, right, which is pre-authorization and that turned into an entire company that is now, employing hundreds of people, because he just happened to throw it onto a comp, show it to a customer. They started asking questions about it. Then he realized that was the key to his business. And his entire business is about that one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas he had no idea he was even going to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's like sometimes people will say to me, like, I'm not sure. I feel like there's a company in me, but I don't know what it is. And I'll say, well, what are people always calling and asking you for free to
Yeah.
give to them for free? And they're like, oh, well, people are always calling me for X and Y and Z, and they're always asking me about this thing that I did or this thing that I did. I said, all right, well, let's start there, right?
Yeah.
So, right. I mean, so I love that because in your comment of get it in the customer's hands and get some feedback. That's gold. I mean,
and you don't have to have a fully built out, and turning out lights up a little bit more light. You don't have to have a fully fleshed out, done production, thing in order to have your first person use it, right?
Right.
And you want to be able to take that to networks of people that you already know who are going to give you honest feedback and experiment with it, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I think it's great. Yeah, it's that advice, get into the customer's hands and get feedback. Or I think one of the things I talk to people, I'd love your opinion on this. People say, I have this idea, but I haven't told anyone. I'm not going to tell anybody because I don't want anybody to steal it. And I always say, well, nobody's going to steal your idea if it's authentically yours. And if you don't start talking to people about it, you won't know, if it's really something that people will, gravitate to, but also your current idea from one question somebody may ask you about it may morph into something that you had no clue. So you need that beta testing. So can you just kind of talk about that, how not to hold it so close to your chest?
Yeah. So we get approached, and the very first thing out of, and you could, I don't want to disparage people, but you could sort of tell the experience of an entrepreneur by if the very first thing they ask you to do is sign an NDA, which we don't do, you realize they haven't done this before. Because if you've ever built a product and taken it to market, it is not about, I've got this revolutionary idea that will change the world. It's about the execution of that idea. And if you don't have, essentially your investors in place, your venture capital in place, your downstream market, your customer base, the ability to build the thing, right? It's about the execution of that idea, not necessarily the idea itself, right? Any of us can go, hey, you know what? Amazon, pretty simple thing. I just want to sell everything on the planet to everyone on the planet. Okay, we'll go do that, right?
Right.
It's no magic. It's just, you got to go execute on it.
But wait, let me just say this too. Amazon started just selling books, right? Their thing was they were out there to be the biggest bookstore in the world. And I don't know this for sure, although I am listening to the Everything Store book right now on Audible, which is great. But I would have to think that at some point people started saying, well, this is great that I can buy a book, but now I want to buy more. Right. So
and you already had some other e-commerce solutions out there that were selling other things, right, into their niches. And you also had book selling competitors. There were a ton at that era. I don't want to date myself, but I happen to be, at Ohio State near that time. And I mean, there were a ton of online sort of stores coming up that were about, hey, trade in your books, buy new books. Every campus had sort of a startup that was doing a book kind of thing, right? Yeah. So it wasn't even that Amazon was unique. Like, no one ever thought of selling a book before. I think that he really just doubled down on doing that, picked his niche, stuck the niche, got his customer base up, and then broke out from there, right? Yeah. He didn't start off with the Everything Store.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm watching right now the Food That Built America on the History Channel. I don't know if you've watched them.
I haven't, but I love those shows.
Yeah. There's the Men That Built America, the Cars That Built America, the Food That Built America. So they just came out with season 2. Episode 10 that I happened to just watch was on Stouffer's versus Swanson TV dinners.
Oh, interesting.
And so what talked about was Swanson wanted to own all the turkeys in the frozen, section. And so they bought 35,000 too many. So they were like, they only will freeze for a year. So we got to figure it out. Well, he's reading a magazine and sees that in World War II, they made these full meals for the people serving our country when they were flying on planes. So he said, if they can do it for planes, let's create something like this with all this with all of our 35,000 leftover turkeys. And then he put this 22-year-old scientist on it, and hence created, because they found that nobody, here's my point, nobody made a turkey unless it was the holidays. It was just too big of a undertaking back. It still is, but this was now, 60, 70 years ago. And so they came up with TV, and then they named it TV dinner, because the TV had just gotten really pretty much mainstream and affordable and in most households. And so just talking about an idea of just taking turkey and pivoting based on the times. It's really fascinating. And to me, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, those shows are incredible to watch, the pioneers and how they pivoted in moments that have shaped many of the things that we see, do, and eat.
I love the shows that are about the sort of the genesis, the creation story of some of these companies that you think, well, they've been around forever. It's like, at some point there was like a guy and an idea, and it built it into what it is. And so, those really teach you a lot as to when to stick with it, but then also when to pivot or fan, and then when should you stop, right? Yeah. That's the other side of the equation, is like, when's enough, and be able to know when to cash out. Yeah. Either exit, sell, IPO, that kind of thing.
Well said. So my last question for you before we go into a speed round is, you are your day-to-day is monitoring market trends based on what you just said. Like, when do you stop? You're doing market trends, you're looking at technology, you're looking for innovation. What is your day-to-day? And then when do you decide, okay, we got to jump in, even though the technology may change over the next 12 to 18 months, we have to jump in now based on this research, in this pocket.
I joke with people that people are like, hey, what's your superpower? My superpower is recognizing fads. It's like, when do you not do something? Like, when is that? Like, I'm going to give that another 6 weeks, 6 months before I'm really willing to commit to it. And then you go, okay, it fits into its space, right? Yeah. And then, is that space something that is market capable or not? And when you sort of look through that and go, what's not a fad, what's real, and what should you be taking to market? Those are the ones that you want to get clients interested in and start going that direction.
Yeah, I love it.
Obviously, the biggest thing we have out there right now that I think is revolutionary is machine learning, right? And we talk to our development teams about this. Every developer in the future needs to have some basic understanding of what a machine learning process looks like. Yeah. Because it's the old saying, you cannot if then else your way to a self-driving car. You cannot write enough code to make a car drive itself and deal with all the situations. Yeah. So as that expands, that's where we spend a lot of time right now is the application of ML to whatever the client project is, and is it the right fit, and is it, if you take the simple interactions that a product has with a customer and then go, what's that going to look like in 5 years? That's when you want to start. That's what really where we spend a lot of our time.
Yeah, I love it. All right, quick speed round. You ready, Chris?
Let's go.
All right, favorite book and why?
Traction, actually, and on the business side, because that changed our entire business. That the EOS, right, as a fundamental, changed how we do business. We implemented that about 18 months ago, and it saved us during the pandemic for sure. On the non-business side, I like Freakonomics. That's one of my that's
a good one. Yeah, that's a great book, and Traction is also a great book. I just had Gino on the show a couple months ago.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
There's no problem you have that sales can't fix.
That's a good one. Yeah. One thing, finish this sentence. One thing every company needs to do to be more innovative today is?
One thing every company needs to do today to be more innovative is to think outside of your problem and think of your customer's problem.
Yeah, I love it. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are, Chris, and how they can connect with you.
Ideal clients for us, we have two. One is sort of the mid-stage startup who is ready to build their thing, right? And that's where we really dig in. The other side of the equation are companies that are in the upscaling, where they really need, they may have built a prototype, but now really need to turn it into commercial kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
The two types of projects that we like are projects that have impact in someone's daily life, right? So we do a lot of nonprofit support kind of work as well. So if what really jazzes us is if a product that is coming along that you could really see the day-to-day impact, or if the product that we're talking about has some extremely challenging technical kind of stuff, we love those. And if we can combine those two, where we get both a impact in someone's life and an extremely disruptive or technical challenge, those are the top projects for us.
Yeah. Well, I love everything that you're talking about, and I just want to highlight a couple things that really stuck out to me. I mean, a lot of what you said did, but most importantly, get things in the customer's hands and get feedback, and know what your customers want, know what they believe, and really be in a place to give it to them. I think that's so critical. Appreciate you being on the show, Chris. Thanks so much. This was
Sure, it was great talking to you.
Think community, if Chris can help you, please reach out, awh.net. Chris, it was great. Everybody have an amazing day, and we'll talk soon. Chris, stay on the line.
Thanks for having me on. A lot of fun, John. All right.